So this is going to be a discussion of fans, by fans, for fans. But I also want to talk, we're going to use Transformers, I think, as a jumping off spot for how we get to fandom, what it means to us, and the fact that fandom can mean different things to different people, because this is a very strange time for fans. On the one hand, there have never been more fan properties that are being made one way or another, be it movies, television, online properties, comic books, toys, you name it. If there's something you're into, it's there. Even, especially with the Transformers, the nostalgia factor is high, and you and I are old enough to know where Transformers came from. We remember 1984, not just as a distant memory, but as something we were active in. So you were in first grade. Okay, well, I think I was in second. So I am Aharon Charnov. I am a fan of a whole lot of stuff, predominantly Transformers, but also Doctor Who, science fiction in general, Robert A. Heinlein, the books of Robert A. Heinlein, preferably the earlier, younger, juvenile ones. The older he got, the weirder he got. Frank Herbert's Dune. I grew up loving G.I. Joe, Thundercats, Transformers, Mask. But Transformers is the one that I've always loved the most, and it stuck with me. So much so that I kept on to Transformers toys. I only sold them off when I needed to help pay for my wedding 13 years ago. And slightly before that is when they started releasing the new Transformers Universe line. And I got back into collecting then slowly, and it has now snowballed. Now that I'm a parent, I'm getting my kids into it, which is great because I have 3 daughters. We have a lot of Transformer tea parties. And you were also a fan of some of that, if not all.
So I'm Ari Baranovsky. I have known Aaron, I think, since high school. Yeah. Ish.
I think it was earlier.
Maybe.
8th grade, I think?
Maybe, yeah, that sounds about right. When I was a kid, that was high school. I had my school. So my main kind of fandoms that have kind of been the driving thing behind like my young adulthood and teenage years have been comic books and Star Trek. Those were my big ones. My dad read comics from when he was a child up until about 4 or 5 years ago. And I taught myself to read when I was about 4.5 years old because I was just like looking over his shoulder as he read like Spider-Man or Power Pack or whatever, and I really wanted to know what was going on. So that plus episodes of the Electric Company got me into reading, and so I could read his comic books. Transformers was for me something that I watched in the afternoon as a kid. It was fun. My brother and I had some of the toys. My folks were never really well off or anything. And so it's mostly just, the mini bots and the occasional birthday present from a grandparent and stuff like that. And those were fun. Most of them got, crushed or busted or given away as I got older. And it just sort of fell by the wayside for a bit. And then I slowly started getting back into it with the Dreamwave comics when those came out. And there was around the same time a little bit of a renaissance of other 80s cartoons in comic book form. Thundercats, which meant, Transformers Dreamwave run, just a couple other bits and pieces. And then I want to say it was just, I'd occasionally grab a comic here or there. And then about 6-8 months ago, I started collecting 1 or 2, and I now have a small shelf with about a dozen. Wait, does a combiner count as 1 or as 5? So that's what that has been, and like Aaron was saying, I also have kids. I have 2 girls. My older daughter just kind of will come in my office, see whichever. It's like, oh, you got another one. Okay. My younger daughter, who is 6, will be like, oh, can I play with those? Can I do whatever? And, we'll just sort of talk about them and pass them back and forth. She's more into playing with my Lego sets, which I also do have a few. One other actually aspect of Transformers from when I was a kid was I had, still have, really just my fine motor skills and dexterity are not great. And it was a fiddly toy that I had to be very mindful as I was, manipulating it. And my OTs thought that those were great. So it was another kind of reason for me to play with them, along with also Lego sets and things like that. And I think I'm starting to trail off a bit. So
That's totally cool.
Yeah.
It's interesting. You had Legos. I had constructs. I'm also casually a fan of Star Trek and Star Wars. I mean, like everybody else, I grew up on Star Wars.
Yeah.
Star Wars sort of has lost its appeal to me, which is crazy. Like, I like some of the new stuff. I love The Mandalorian, but like I don't salivate over Star Wars. I like the music more than anything. I really like the soundtracks to the original trilogy. And I go back and I watch them from time to time, but it's not crazy with me like it is with Transformers.
Have you started watching them with your kids yet?
Star Wars? No.
A little younger than mine, but I think your eldest is the same age as my youngest, and she's a big fan. I felt, for me, so I saw Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi when I was 4, which was the year that Jedi was coming out, and one of the area movie theaters was rescreening the first two in the run-up, and I think we missed Star Wars for whatever reason, and then we saw Empire Strikes Back, and then like 2 or 3 weeks later we saw Return of the Jedi, and I was kind of hooked. And then when Force Awakens came out, I had a kid in kindergarten, and there was just something really special about like taking my kindergartner to see a Star Wars movie in the theater. And for me, a lot of that kind of geek-related stuff that I have, being able to kind of present it to my kids, share it with the two of them, and kind of see what they take to and what they don't, and how they kind of go off in their own direction is interesting and gratifying.
Yeah, it is. It really is. I have a very similar experience, but not with Star Wars in the theater, with Transformers, because I remember watching the original miniseries when it came on, and it was there were 3 22-minute long commercials for toys that, frankly, I knew I was going to own every single one of them, like I had to. But I just salivated over it. And my middle daughter, who is only 4, she reminds me in terms of her imagination and her play pattern of how I played then. And I introduced her to Transformers also, and we watched through all of G1 together, she and me.
Wow.
And she really likes it. I mean, she definitely brings a more traditionally cis-feminine approach to it. Like, she wants to talk to all the characters, and she wants to sit down and talk with them and have, invite them to her castle. And that is totally cool, but she still wants to. And we watched season 1, season 2, the movie, season 3. There were a lot of questions about season 3 that I cannot answer because season 3 is crazy.
How'd you do with the movie, given that like everybody gets killed off?
So she took it in her stride. There was definitely some questions to be asked, but I think she, can say in her head those are machines and it's cartoons and it's not real. But we were out in a field one day playing, and she looked up at the sky and goes, "Oh no, Unicron's coming! We got to fight it!" And it was awesome. And my older daughter is much more down to earth and is not necessarily interested in this kind of fantasying and role playing. But
really, okay.
My middle daughter brings her along and gets her into it. But she likes the toys, and she likes to do the videos with me because she was crafty and she likes to make things. So when we make a video together, so everyone has their way into it, and really like the Transformers because, again, there's so many avenues. Having girls specifically, one of my daughters one day asked, are there girl Transformers? And my wife was in the room and sort of very derisively was like, "Oh no, it's a boy's toy." And I was like, excuse me. So I went out and got all the girl Transformers. So we have multiple Windblades and RC and Chromia and Moonracer and Alita 1 and Victorion. I haven't gotten all of them. There were no Green Lights, Nova Stars. I haven't been able to pick up everybody.
You're not getting Megatronia.
I could, but
Would you?
life is money's tight,
Yeah,
right? Like
I mean, just
you got to be very selective in what you buy.
yeah, I kind of have a cap for what I'm willing to spend on an individual item.
Right. So that's why I will never buy a real Omega Supreme. I bought but that's why I've been on this like knockoff um, kick, because I got the huge dragon for $35. Right. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's probably the upper limit of what you should spend.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
did shell out for the Optimus Prime because it's Optimus Prime with a trailer for the first time since I was a kid. And I wasn't
Oh, this is
paying
the
for
Earthrise.
the Earthrise. Yeah, I also got the
What do you think
Prime
of it?
one.
Because I don't think I've seen you in person since the pandemic came down. So.
Yeah, with the Toy Hacks labels and
Mm-hmm.
non-F's add-ons, it's
Okay.
great. So I did do all those with
Okay.
and it's great with all those. I love the non-F add-ons. Just the fact that the trailer door that comes off still has those two little prongs that came up. It's just so reminiscent of the Prime that I parted ways with. So
Mm-hmm.
almost a decade and a half ago.
Sure.
It's good. I really like having an Optimus Prime. I was a latchkey kid growing up.
Mm-hmm.
My parents were divorced. My mom was working 2 jobs.
Sure.
So we came home, and like everybody else, my sister was good. She did her homework and then got on with getting on the phone, as I recall, and talking to her friends back in the days when the big thing was to have a corded phone in your room.
Yes.
And that was her thing. I came home and watched 3 hours of TV.
Yeah.
And then late at night, it was like, I got to do homework, but I've forgotten everything already because I've, fried my brains on animation.
And replaced it with robots. Yeah.
With giant fighting robots and
Yep.
in ridiculous episodes. But it really resonated in Prime as a character. I mean, Peter Cullen was brilliant in that. He
Mm-hmm.
really he talks about it in the interviews, how he like patterned it on his brother who was a Marine and John Wayne, but also like Optimus Prime, like the character, at least in the G1 continuity, the original cartoon, is never wrong. He's all powerful, all wise, compassionate. Freedom is the right of all sentient beings. He was a great father figure
Mm-hmm.
for those of us who needed surrogate fathers. So there's a very special place in my heart for Optimus Prime.
Okay.
And we should, maybe talk about that as we get into it. So, but yeah, I really like the Earthrise Prime. Like, I don't need every single one of them. I'm not getting the dead one.
Mm-hmm.
Why would you do that, Hasbro?
I don't.
I mean, I get it. Like, there are people out there who are going to want every iteration of a thing they can, and this,
And the Nemesis Prime that just came out, and
right. So the Nemesis Prime at least was like the Earthrise Prime's trailer and the Siege Prime body.
Prime.
So when the Siege Prime came out, everyone was asking like, how come he's got a trailer hitch if he doesn't have a trailer? Well, now we know why.
Right. Well, now.
I don't mind Hasbro dipping from that well as many times as they can. If it satisfies some fans' desire, go for it. Yeah. I got my traditional red and blue Optimus Prime. In my voice, I hear the deep voice of God of Peter Cullen, and I'm happy enough. So yeah, I like it.
It's funny because I'm very rarely into, and this is sort of across the various aspects of my fandom in general. I'm usually into like the main line, like, the Optimus Prime I have, the only Optimus Prime I have is the like Furai Toys model shattered glass version of Optimus Prime. I like the like alternate takes on things. I've read Superman comics for years as a kid, but was my favorite character ever Superman? No, it was Mon-El, because he's kind of like Superman, but a little different. And I like the mirror universe in Star Trek.
I was going to ask you, so does that mean you're a fan of the mirror universe?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like you can go to the well once too often, but generally they've done a good job of it. But like
when Hoshi became Empress in Enterprise?
Yeah. And so like I bought Cliffjumper when he came out for Earthrise, because Cliffjumper was one of the first Transformers toys we had as a kid, my brothers. But I also pre-ordered Bugbite when he came out, because is Bugbite one of the regular Transformers? No, he's a GoBot from another dimension who is masquerading as a Transformer-based mercenary. Yeah, I go for that. That's like, okay, cool. I'll do that. It's weird and kind of off. If they ever decide to do a mainline Shattered Glass run,
Mm-hmm.
As opposed to it is a convention exclusive that you need to buy at the convention, and then we'll go, aftermarket for like 5 times its regular price at least. You know, I feel like I would spend more money than I really should if they like came out with a, mainline Shattered Glass run, because I like the sort of how do we take this and like alter it to kind of and explore in more of a meta context, I guess, if I can sound that pretentious. Explore what the vehicle of the show or franchise of whatever form, and what that is. I like exploring the genre of stuff almost as much, if not more, than I like just sort of the main, just the actual thing itself.
That's cool. I mean, you sadly you answered like 2 of the 3 questions I thought of as you were talking, just because I'm like, I should probe further on this, but then you went right there. So yeah, first of all, don't apologize. You're not pretentious. You like what you like, and we want to figure out what you like, and that's part of why we're doing this. Is I want to talk a little bit about why are we fans, and if you think about it, people are fans whether they're geek culture or jocks or what have you. I mean, everyone, and it's from our childhood forward. People have their sports team. My father-in-law is a huge Giants fan, and excuse me, I lied. Oh God, I can get in trouble for that. My father-in-law is a huge Pats fan.
Okay. Yeah. Don't cross that stream.
And right, you do not cross that stream. No. And when someone asks you if you're a god, say yes.
Yes.
But so, I wonder what is it? People seem to need to like a thing, whatever that is. For some people, that's sports or a sports team, and it differs for certain people. Some people, it's just the sport of golf or the sport of baseball. For some people, it's I have to be a Red Sox fan. I am not, but my wife and her family all are.
Oh, yes, they are.
Oh, yes, they are. What did I say? I didn't. No. They're from Massachusetts. So,
yeah.
And the big gig. It was a hole. So yeah. We'll go with that.
I think I've probably known your in-laws far longer than you have.
That is true.
Yeah.
But once we know each other because from Scout Camp, that's where we first met, I think. And one summer I stayed on with your troop. I don't remember why exactly, but I stayed on with your troop, and I came home with a mutual friend of ours. And when I was staying with him, his mom had to return something to my wife's house because her brothers were in the troop as well.
Right.
And I still hadn't met her.
Right.
So I knew her brothers and her family.
Right.
I met her mother.
Before you met her.
Long before, decades before I met my wife, which is crazy weird. And when we first met and figured out how we had connections, it was freaky and weird. And when I went to college with her brother, and when we saw each other before my wife and I got married, I was like, so it's been a while. We knew each other, and it was kind of cool.
Very cool.
So I wonder about fandom because some people are into books or a particular author. I mentioned before, like Robert A. Heinlein is huge. Like I read Starship Troopers when I was 10, and it warped my fragile little mind. And I go back to it.
I remember one of the first times we met at summer camp. I made a Stranger in a Strange Land reference, and you got ridiculously excited. And then I had to immediately backtrack because, like, I had not read Stranger in a Strange Land yet. I just knew what the word grok was.
I was going to say, did you say grok? Because
yes. Yeah. I still haven't read Stranger in a Strange Land.
You know what? If quarantine weren't on, I would bring my copy over to you, and you could.
I'll get around to it. The library's back open. I can reserve it and pick it up at some point.
Sure. It's weird, but like that's what I'm saying. Like Stranger is also one of those where he was already getting weird by that.
Yeah, that was when he really kind of took a left turn into just wackadoo.
I'm more of like a Citizen of the Galaxy, Starman Jones, Doorway into Summer, Double Star. Oh God, I love all those books.
Yeah.
Podcane of Mars.
It's a harsh mistress. How much for just the planet?
The Moon is a harsh mistress.
Yes.
Citizen of the Galaxy and Starship Troopers on my 3.
How much for just the planet is a Star Trek novel. Never mind.
You're thinking of The Man Who Sold the Moon.
Yes.
It's a compilation of short stories, but it sets up the future. And
Yep.
what is it? War in 2054, I think. That's the Nehemiah Scudder ones.
Yeah.
Which he then later folds in and gets into this whole meta universe.
He walks through walls. Yeah.
The cat who walks through walls, right? So that's where it comes back to it and starts building it up again. But that's my point, right? Like, we're crazy fans. We know this. If I know people who are crazy fans for G.I. Joe and Hogan's Heroes, and everyone on the planet should be a crazy fan for a bit of Fry and Laurie and Monty Python, because they're funny, and why wouldn't you be fans of things that are funny? And I wonder, like, and there's some people who are like really into horror flicks, which is not something I'm into. Yeah. I'm like really into animation and fantasy and science fiction and drama even. But I've been thinking a lot, and Transformers is sort of my main fandom, even though we obviously have a whole broad spectrum. Why are people fans is my question, and I want to sort of. We've been at this for a while. We've been talking. It's great to talk. It's great to see you. We should do this.
Yeah.
We should do this once a week, just because it's nice to have friends.
It's nice to have social contact with other human beings. Yes.
I see you. I want to talk about Transformers. I want this to be our discussion about Transformers as fandom, because why do we like this thing? What is it about it that two grown men are talking about a property from their childhood that we haven't abandoned? Right. And we are not strange geeks living in our mom's basement. We are strange geeks who are married to women with children and friends and actual professional lives, and
living in our own basements right now. Yeah.
Graduate. Well, I'm in my office, not the basement.
Okay. See, my office is in the basement. So
I know, but mine isn't. But I do most of my photo work and my filmmaking in the basement, right? At the workbench, and I have a downstairs green screen too, because who doesn't have several?
I have a college blanket.
So I want to, there are a number of things we could talk about for Transformers. For example, you mentioned the Dreamwave comic. I was really into it, and I'm fascinated by what happened with Pat Lee and Dreamwave's implosion. So let's start at the very beginning, if we could, which actually I would argue is the comics. There's the Marvel Comics line, Marvel US, Marvel UK, which I hate. It knows why. I don't actually. I quite like the Marvel UK. Well, it's not true. I have some beefs with it. I dunk on it because I decided there are certain Transformer items that I dunk on because I decided I needed something to dunk on. So Sea Spray and Marvel UK, I have decided are the evil Transformer things.
Why don't you like Sea Spray? Isn't that how he sounded like in the cartoon? Like he was
a little bit. So there's Transformers G1. There's the comics. There's Transformers G1 and the accompanying commercials, which I would argue really need to be looked at, because the animation on some of them is stunning and better quality than the shows. Well, the shows have a really strange history of the animation, because sometimes the animations were running late and they farmed it out to other to companies, whether it was ACOM or Toei. That's a huge thing, but also like internally at Toei, things were being messed around with. There are some Transformer episodes where everything is off model, or the characters look much more Scooby-Doo than Transformers than you realize. And it's worth going back episode by episode to do it. I mean, forget about the goofs. Those are fun to watch. But we should talk about that. Of course, then there's Beast War. Well, there's Generation 2, which is just a repackaging of Gen 1.
Right, with a kid talking to a gigantic Optimus Prime animatronic and sitting on the hand. Yeah.
Yep. And really bad early stage CG animation.
Yep.
The Hypercube, whatever. Then there's Beast Wars, which is also ridiculously bad. Early, let's say, CG animation. Beast Wars has got a lot of heart. The stories are pretty good. You are not into it.
I tried. I mean, I think I kind of missed that critical period where, if you can't get into it at like a younger age or whatever, it's just not going to happen. Like, I just tried watching it recently because it's all on Tubi TV, and I mean, I made it 5 or 6 minutes into the first episode, and it was just like the animation was driving me out of it, and the very much like they're pitching it to kids, which is of course what they should be doing, and it's like I am a somewhat adult human being, and like the way that they introduce characters is not exactly nuanced. It's just, hey, we have crashed. I am a rat. You will now call me Rat Trap. And it's like, they call you before. And why would they call this guy Rhinox if he wasn't turning into a rhino and he was just turning into a, I don't know, forklift, you know?
Right. So that's fair. And you're right. It was definitely pitched to kids. I would argue that is not, first of all, the animation and the quality of the rendering got better into the second season. But I would argue start with the episode Code of Hero, give that one a shot, because that's where they kill off Dinobot, and it's like one of the most heroic deaths ever, and it's a really good episode. It's also the one the first one I ever saw, and then I started plotting my college courses around Beast Wars so that I could watch.
Wow.
Yeah. And then there's Beast Machines, which is breathtakingly beautiful, but a hot mess of a story, and a slow burn, but not in a good way. And it makes some narrative choices that just really bug me in terms of just reusable tropes. Like, why is Megatron always all powerful and all knowing? Like, it's worth going into for that. Not that Megatron, the Grand Mal Megatron. But yeah, so there's that. But then it gets weirdo, right? After that, it's Transformers Robots in Disguise. That was 2001, which was sort of repackaged from the Japanese one, and it was weird and sort of had more of a humorous mold to it. Then came the Unicron Trilogy, which was with the CG again. Armada, Energon, Cybertron. Those are very mixed bags and are, maybe worth looking into, maybe not. There's Transformers Animated, which I've just started watching finally for the first time, and is really
I've seen a few of those, and I've seen a little bit of Prime, and I really enjoyed that.
Well, that comes later because that's more their aligned continuity. Then came Prime, the Rescue Bots, Transformers Go, also Robots in Disguise. Let us not forget Rescue Bots Academy. Talk about toned towards children. That's cute stuff, and I think it's still available on Netflix. And then came the Machinima Prime Wars trilogy, which are really just sort of fan service in a weird way. And apparently were not well liked. I got to say, I really enjoyed them.
Yeah. Were they great? No. Did I enjoy them? Yeah.
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
Combiner Wars, Titans Return, Power of the Primes.
It's what got me back into collecting was the Power of the Primes, Rodimus Unicronus, because it's Shattered Glass Hot Rod, and I like Shattered Glass, and I saw it, and I had to have it because for some reason robots have facial hair now.
Because they look like Macho Man Randy Savage.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So we got to talk about that. We got to do a whole episode on Shattered Glass, and you got to lead us through that because I don't know as much about Shattered Glass. And then there's Cyberverse, which my kids and I are watching now, and they're loving it, and I think it's got a lot of flaws to it, like storylines just sort of end and start, and also I'm pretty sure they switched showrunners between season 2 and season 3. I want to know the whole story behind that. I don't know. I haven't started researching yet. But Cyberverse, both animated and Cyberverse are really interesting to me because huge risks were taken, right? Animated looks much more anime and much more of like the Invader Zim sort of look of the time with some anime overtones to it. That really broke sort of a particular mold. Not that Beast Wars and Beast Machines didn't, but I'm saying like in Beast Wars and Beast Machines, there still was this whole idea that there clearly are objects and they're transforming. Whereas in anime, it's incredibly stylized. And what does it mean for something that doesn't really look like the thing it represents to transform? Like how is that any different? It doesn't look, the same. So that was really interesting to me, and I'd love to get into that at some point. And Cyberverse also is this huge departure, and it's very cartoony. It's CG, but it's not. It's bright colors and it's aimed towards kids, and yet it's really not. I mean, the third season is very Matrix inspired and dark, and
Yeah.
And
There's things about it like, I mean, it has heart to it.
It does.
Which I think is great, you know, and again, it's not like kids' cartoons are generally dark and gritty or anything, but this is very much the opposite of that. And they do kind of depart from some of the like, you know, usual tropes of the Transformers where there's a war and the war is always ongoing. And then in season 3, there's just sort of a truce and the war is done, or at least in some sort of a, you know, ceasefire or impasse. I don't know. I haven't finished it yet because it still hasn't finished being released in the States. But I really appreciate that they're doing more with it than just, oh, okay, now Bumblebee's the mute one, Optimus Prime is the gruff one. Like, there's the bit where, you know, there's an episode, Optimus Prime is trying to adjust from being the military leader to now having to, like, rebuild Cybertron, and everybody's running to him with questions, and he's like, I don't, just go fix, why are you bothering me, you know? And I like that exploration.
That's cool. Yeah, no, it's you know, and of course, all these things feed on each other. I feel like Cyberverse was in many ways very IDW influenced. IDW in turn was very influenced by other things. I mean, IDW's biggest influence, I would argue, is George R.R. Martin in a lot of ways, because he did for fantasy, you know, he brought it out and made it gray, right? There's no black and white. There's no goods, bads. You know, certain people are good to other people. Certain people, and yet they're bad to other people. And that's what Cyberverse sort of took. And I think it sort of took that idea and turned it a little bit and said everyone's basically human and everyone's basically good. And that's how you get Clobber being, you know, can be Hot Rod's friend.
Right.
And that sort of thing. What?
And defecting.
Oh, I haven't got there. I did not know that Clobber. Well, now I know. They killed off a Slipstream, which made me very sad.
Yeah.
And then, of course, just moving through just the properties, since we're talking about it, and we will get into all this as we keep going. There's, of course, the War for Cybertron trilogy that has just started with Siege on Netflix, which you either love or you hate, apparently. I kind of dug it. I thought it was pretty good. It's a slow burn, but I'm okay with that.
Pretty to look at, very slow paced.
And then, right, and you know, I definitely, as a former computer animator, I definitely like the pretty to look at.
Sure.
There is one property of all this that we have not talked about, and that is the toys themselves. We should probably get into also. Right? Why do we play with big hunks of plastic, some of which look like nothing? What?
Yeah, as adults.
Yeah.
No.
I mean, speaking of Slipstream, right? So I got this KO, and I've decided this is going to be my Slipstream. She's going to be my Seeker girl. Why not? Although there is talk, apparently, Hasbro is going to be releasing a new purple Tetrajet. And call it Slipstream. Hopefully, it's a retool so they can feminize the face at least. I would hope for, but you know, this is my office where I work, and here's my KO Megatron, who recently got his Decepticon badge.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, I will just, like, in the middle of a call, you know, reach over, grab, exhaust, and just, you know, transform or fiddle to have something to do, you know.
Oh yeah.
A lot of fun.
Absolutely. It's the only way I can get through Zoom meetings at work, because otherwise I fall asleep. Alrighty, well, we've been at this for a long time.
Indeed.
I think we've gone through a whole bunch of Transformer stuff we can talk about. I think next time we should, you know, hone in on one particular topic and find a unifying theme about it. I really like the idea of exploring fandom. Hopefully you'll get on board for that.
Yeah,
we need to find a name for this thing, and hopefully it'll be part of the Nexus 84 YouTube channel, and we will probably make no money off of this. So we're not even going to try.
Great.
But I do want you to talk. I want you to do an episode. You want you to lead an episode about why you're so into sort of the shattered glass, what if kind of side of life.
Interesting.
Cool. Well, until next time, Mr. B.
Yes, indeed. See you later.